We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Tesam and Beis in Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 59b. The Mishnah says, Meis Echad Mehen, if one of the two Nazirim dies. This is a continuation from the earlier Mishnah. The earlier Mishnah had a case where you had two Nazirs, and we don't know which one of them is Tameh, so they bring their Karbanos together, and they make certain conditions. If I'm the one that's Tameh, then the Karban Tumah is mine, etc. So what happens if one of them dies? What do they do? What does the remaining one do in that case? So Amar Rabbi Yoshua says the solution is as follows. Yevakesh echad min ashuk. They should find someone, he should find someone from the marketplace. Sheyadur kenegdo b'nazir, and that person will take an oath similar to him. He'll also take an oath to be a nazir. V'yomer, and then they can make conditions as follows. He can say as follows. Im tameh hayisi, if I was tameh, harei ata nazir miyad, then you're going to be a nazir immediately. V'imtara, you see, however, let's say I was pure, so hareata nazir achar shloshim yom, then you're only going to be a nazir after 30 days. And then what they do is as follows. V'sofrin shloshim, they count 30 days, umevian karban tumah v'karban tahara, and they bring a carbon of tumah, and they bring a carbon of tahara. They bring a carbon of impurity and a carbon of purity. V'yomer, and he says the following condition. Imanihu hatame, if I was tame, so then carbon tumah shali, then the carbon tumah that we're bringing, that's my carbon. The carbon tahara shalcha, and the carbon tahara, that's going to be yours, because again, you were a nazir right away in that situation. V'imanihu atar, now if I was tar, so carbon tahara shali, the carbon tahara will be mine. The carbon tumah besafik, and the carbon tumah will be a carbon tumah that is brought besafik, which Rashi will explain. V'so from shloshim yom, and then they count another 30 days. Umevian carbon tahara, and they bring a carbon tahara. V'yomer, and then he says, Imani hatame carbon tumah shali, v'carbon tahara shalcha, v'zeh carbon taharasi. Again, if I was tame, so that carbon tumah that we brought before, that was mine, and the carbon tahara, that was yours, that concluded your nazirus. And now this one that we're bringing now is my carbon of tahara. V'manihu hatar, but if I was tar, so carbon tahara shali, then the carbon tahara that was brought earlier was mine. The carbon tumah besafik, and the carbon tumah that we brought, that was brought besafik. V'zehu carbon taharascha, and this carbon right now will be the carbon of your purity. But the Mishnah continues, Amar lo ben Zoma. Ben Zoma said to him, Umi shomei lo sheyadr kenegdo ben nazir. Who are you going to find that will listen to him, that is willing to make a neder to be a nazir corresponding to him? Rather, there's a different solution, says Ben Zoma. Elamevi chatas ha'of v'olas behema. What the person can do is he can bring a carbon chatas that is a bird carbon chatas, and he can bring a carbon ola from an animal. V'yomer, and he can say the following condition. Im tameh hayisi, if I was tameh, so hachatas mechova. See, this carbon chatas that I'm bringing is my obligation. V'ola nadav, and the ola that I'm bringing now, it's just a donation. V'im tar hayisi, and if I was pure, so then ha'ola mechovasi, then the carbon ola that I'm bringing now, that's from my obligation. V'hachatos misafik, and the chatos has a status of a chatos misafik, of a chatos from doubt. V'sover shloshim yom, and then he can count 30 days. Umevi carbon tahara, then he could bring a carbon tahara. V'yomer, and he'll say as follows: Im tameh hayisi, if I was tameh ha'ola harishona nedava v'zu chova, then that original ola was just an nedava, and this is really my obligation, the conclusion of my nazirus. V'im tar hayisi, but if I was pure, ha'ola harishona chova, that first ola I brought, that was for my obligation, that was the conclusion of my nazirus. V'zu nedava, and this one is a donation. V'zu shar karbani, and this he'll bring the remaining karbanos. These are the remaining from the karbanos I need to bring. Amar Rabbi Yoshua, so Rabbi Yoshua said when he heard the solution, Nimtza zeh, maybe karbanos of l'chatzam, it comes out that this individual who is a nazir is bringing his karbanos in halves, meaning he's not bringing all of his karbanos at the same time. Some of the karbanos that conclude his nazirus he brought earlier, and some he's bringing now. Aval hodu lo chachamim leven zoma. Nevertheless, even though Rabbi Yoshua made this argument, but the chachamim admitted to Ben Zoma that his solution was in fact a good solution. And Rashi explains, Meis echad mehen, again, if one of the two Nazirs died and now only one is remaining and he doesn't know whether he was tameh or not, Amar Rabbi Yoshua yevakesh echad min ashuk, so Rabbi Yoshua says he should seek someone out from the marketplace, v'yevakesh mimenu sheyadr kenegdo lios nazir, and he should ask him to be a corresponding nazir to him, kemozed, just like this one, shemeis, like the one who died, this guy should take his place. V'yomer lo, and he says to him, Im tameh hayisi harei ata nazir miyad, and he says, if I was a tameh nazir, if I'm the one that's tameh, then you should be a nazir right away. Ulachar shloshim mutar ata legaleach v'lishtos b'yayin, and in that case, after 30 days, you'll be allowed to shave and drink wine. However, v'imtara, you see, but if I actually was tar, v'chaverei tameh, and it was my friend that was tameh, harei ata nazir lachar shloshim yom, then your nazirus is only going to start 30 days from now. V'sofer and shloshim yom, and they count 30 days me'achshav from now. U'v'sof shloshim mevi'in karban tumah v'karban tahara b'shutfus. And then, at the end of 30 days, together they will bring a karban tumah and a karban tahara. V'yomer lo so shevi min ashuk, and then he says to the person that he brought in from the marketplace, Imaniyu atame, if I was tameh, so hare karban tumah shali, the karban tumah is mine, v'karban tahara shalcha, and the carbon of purity that's yours. V'yemanihu atar, and if I was the pure one, v'adayin lochal, all of naziras ad lachar shloshim, in which case you're really not a nazir until after the 30 days, kedamar mitchila, like was the original condition. V'yimtar hayisi hare atar nazir lachar shloshim, that's what he said. If I am tar, then you're nazir after 30 days. So if that's the case that I was tar, hare karban tahara shali, then the karban tahara is mine. The karban tumah b'safek, and the karban tumah is being brought out of doubt, and Rashi explains what that means. V'chatas ha'of, this karban tumah we're talking about is the karban chatas, that is the bird karban chatas, and the halach is if you have a chatas ha'of shemevi al safek tumah, if you bring a chatas ha'of on a situation of doubtful tumah, so that there's a halacha, eino necheles v'az l'kvura, it's not eaten and it's buried. Kedamrinan b'perak misha amar hareini nazir, that's what we say earlier. Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says, minayin l'chatas ha'of haba al safek shein necheles v'chulu, that's Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda's statement regarding the chatas ha'of that comes in a situation of doubt. Now, what about the other remaining karbanos? The olas ha'of. Now, in terms of the olas ha'of, so iboy maisi lo l'shem nedava. So if he wants, he can bring it as an nedava. V'iboy lo maisi lo klal. And if he wants to also, he doesn't have to bring it at all. Kevan de doron bialmahu lo ma'akev. It's really just considered a gift, and it's not something that's ma'akev in this situation. V'osham nami, and also the karban osham that is generally brought by a nazir who's tamei, that also lo itzrich le'suya. He doesn't need to bring that. The osham eno ma'akvo me'kapara. The osham is not something that is absolutely required in terms of kapara. Kedamrinan perek mishamar hareini nazir megaleach hevi chataso v'lo hevi ashama mona. That's what we say in earlier. He brings his chatas and he doesn't bring his asham. He can count v'adayin asur and lishtos biyayin v'litami lemesim, and he's still usur, and it's still usur in drinking wine and being tami meis. Avachozrin mesorvin shloshim yom umevian karban tahara b'shutfis, and then they count the other 30 days, and again they bring the karban tahara b'shutfis. They bring that in partnership, and what do they say then? V'yomer, and then he says as follows: Imanihu shohayisi tame. If I was actually tame, so karban tumah hayashali, that karban tumah we brought earlier is mine. The karban tahara haya shalcha, and the karban tahara we brought earlier was yours. Zeshal achshav karban taharasi, and now the karban that I'm bringing is my karban of purity. V'imanihu atar va'oso shemeis hayatame. Now if I actually was tar and the other guy was the one that was tame, the karban tahara hayashali, and that karban tahara we brought earlier was mine. The karban tumah haya besafik, and the karban tumah has the status of a chatas of that's besafik. Harezeh karban taharascha, then this carbon will be your carbon of purity. And it's from that point and onward, mutarim lishtos biyayin v'litami lemesim. They'll be able to drink wine and become tamei meis. And then the Mishnah had benzoma solution. Amarlo benzoma misho me'alo. No one's going to listen to be a corresponding nazir. Elamashlim es nazira. What he does is as follows. He finishes his naziras v'yavi b'safek chatas ha'of. He brings again a safek, a doubtful chatas ha'of. Uliyasham uliolas ha'of lo chayshinan kemo shamarno. He doesn't need to worry about the olas ha'of, and he doesn't need to worry about the asham, like we said. Elachatas ha'of shibal asafek yavi. Again, he brings the chatas ha'of, and that's able to be brought in a situation of doubt. Kemo al safek tumah, like a case of safek tumah. V'yavi ima olas behema ushar karbanos naziras tahara eno tzarech lavi lialter. And then it said, according to Ben Zoma, he brings a karban olas behema. The other karbanos of the naziras of tahara, he doesn't have to bring immediately. Ela la'achar shloshim shnim, just after the second period of 30 days. Sharei adayin eno yachol lishtos biyayin v'litami lemesim ad la'achar shloshim yom. He's not able to drink wine or be tami meis till after 30 days. Ume'achshav omer. And so right now he says as follows: Im tami ha'yisi, if I was tami ha'chatos mechovasi shel karban tumah, then the chatas will be my obligation of karban tumah. V'ola zul in a dove, and this ola will be a donation. The nazir tame lo maisi olas behema, because the nazir tame doesn't have to bring an olas behema. V'im tarani, and if I was pure, zu ola mechovasi, this ola will be from my obligation. V'chatas besafik, and the chatas will just be considered a chatas safik. V'ein an achelas, and it will not be eaten. V'olas behema kreva l'shem chov, and the olas behema will be part of his obligation. V'chozer v'sofer shloshim yom, he then goes ahead and counts another 30 days. Umevi karban tara bilvad chatas behema v'olas behema ushlamim, and he brings only the karban tahara, which is the chatas behema, and the olas behema ushlamim, and the karban shlamim. V'omer, and he says, im tami hayisi, that if I was tami ola harishon and adava, that first ola was just a donation. V'zucho v'im shar karbanose, and this is going to be the obligation together with the rest of my obligation karbanos. V'im tarani, and if I was pure, hare olas behema rishon achova, that original ola I brought, that will be from the obligation. V'zu nadava, and this will be an adava. Ve'elu shar karbanose, and these are the rest of my karbanos. And then the Mishnah said, Amar Rabbi Yoshua said, Nimtzas Ata Omer, according to you, what's coming out is Shimtar Hay, that if he was pure, Shemevi Karbanos of Lechatzayin, he's actually bringing his Karbanos in halves. He's not bringing them all at the same time. Shebetiglachas Rishona Hevi Karbanolos Behema, because in that first shaving, he's bringing the Karbanola of the animal. V'achshav Hevi Chatasov Zivchei Shlamim, and now he's going ahead and bringing the rest of the Karbanos, the Chatas and the Shlamim. He's dividing it up according to your solution. Aval Hodu Chachamim Ledivrei Ben Zoma, but the Chachamim agreed to Ben Zoma. Shein Choshenim Hevi Karbanos of Lechatzayin. That's not a problem to bring in Lechatzayin. V'od Shein Omotzi Mishayadar Nazir Kenegdo. He's not going to find anyone else to be a Nazir corresponding to him. And the idea over here, again, according to Ben Zoma's solution, is you have to bring that Karbanola right away for the possibility that maybe he's not actually Tameh, maybe he's Tar. That will allow him to shave, because a Nazir Tameh would have to shave, so he's going to have to shave. And the way he's able to shave again is he brings the Chatas Misafik, if he's a Nazir Tameh, and he shaves as the shaving of a Nazir who's Tameh, and then on the possibility that he's a Nazir who's pure, he brings that Karbanola, and that allows him to shave on that possibility, and then again counts the other 30 days and brings the rest of the Karbanos. And the Gemara says, Vilaisi, so why can't the Nazir bring his Karbanos in stages? In other words, the Gemara is asking on Rabbi Yehoshua's argument against Ben Zoma. Rabbi Yehoshua said to Ben Zoma, Nimtzazeh mevi Karbanos of Lechatzoim. He's bringing his Karbanos, Lechatzoim, he's bringing some of them at one point in time, and others at a later point in time. But the Gemara is saying, Vilaisi, what's wrong with that? Why can't he bring his Karbanos in two stages? What is wrong with Ben Zoma's solution? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So the Gemara says that Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, Lo Amar Rav Yehoshua ela lechaded boas haTalmidim. Really, Rav Yehoshua only made that argument to sharpen the minds of the Talmidim, but really, actually, it's true. There's nothing wrong with bringing the Karbanos in different stages, and Rav Yehoshua himself knew that that was the case. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, another argument why it's clear that Rabbi Yehoshua cannot make this argument against Ben Zoma, because Ma'ili Avidle Rabbi Yehoshua L'Dakia D'Lo Leisru, because Rabbi Yehoshua has the same problem. What is he going to do with the intestines that they shouldn't spoil, according to his approach? And Tosas explain, Ma'ili Avid Rabbi Yehoshua L'Dakia D'Lo Leisru, what's Rabbi Yehoshua going to do for the intestines that they won't spoil? Perish, what it means is as follows. The explanation is, Livnei Mayayim Shelo Yasrichu, like we said, we're talking about the intestines that they shouldn't spoil. To Kevan Sheyevakesh Echad Sheyadr Kenegdo Benazir. The point of the Gemara over here is, since according to Rabbi Yehoshua, the Nazir has to find someone else to be a Nazir corresponding to him, Imkain L'Sov Shloshim Yom, if that's the case, so at the end of 30 days, when they're completing the Nazirus, Keshemegalchin Shneim, when they're both shaving, Shneim Tzrichim Lohanef HaChelev, so they're all going to need to do a waving of the fat. That's talking about the fat of the carbon. V'tiglachas Shneim Hi Lefnei Tenufa, and the shaving that takes place actually happens before they wave. So Imkain, if that's true, Yasriach HaChelev, so they're going to have to wait till they both shave. Now you have to have two people that have to shave, so the Chelev is going to spoil. Because now you're delaying actually burning it until after the two shavings, and that's already too much of a delay. That's the problem with Rabbi Yehoshua's approach. Now granted, let's say you actually had two people. The case in our mission is one of them died, and you find a corresponding person to be the corresponding Nazir. But let's say it's true when you actually have the two Nazirs and they're both alive, so everybody agrees they have to bring together the Karban Tumah and Tara. There you have no other solution. There is no alternate solution. But in the Seifa, in this mission over here, where one of them died, and you can use the solution of Ben Zoma without having someone else become a Nazir. Now you don't have to wait for two people to shave. That's why Rabbi Yehoshua should not have said that somebody else should become a Nazir as well, because that causes this delay, and it will cause the intestines to spoil. And Tosas continue, V'perish Acher, there's another explanation, Kasavli Dakila Evarim de Ola. We're actually talking about the limbs of the Ola, not here the intestines of the Karban Shlamim. We're talking about the Ola, Dana Niktaros Acher Teglach Hashneim, that they're not burned until both of the Nazirs shave. V'kasha, but that approach is difficult. Ha'ola Eino Ikar Mitzvahs Damim, Kim and Ashlamim. The main mitzvah of the Damim is not from the Ola, it's really from the Karban Shlamim, so that's really what we should be referring to. And also, why should you have to wait until the shaving in order to burn by the Karbanola? We don't find such a thing. Therefore, Tosa says it appears to be correct. The way I have explained, again, we're talking about these the Chelev of the Karban Shlamim. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Nazir Shahai V'haya tamei b'safek u'muchlat b'safek. Let's say you have a Nazir, and it's a safek whether he's tamei meis, and it's also a safek whether he's a confirmed mitzora. And this Mishnah was discussed earlier. We read it lengthily mefarish on Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph, explaining this Mishnah. But the Mishnah continues, Ochel b'kachim achar shishim yom, so he's able to eat kachim after 60 days. The idea over here is he's a Nazir for 30 days, but he has to do 60 days. He has to do 2 sets of Nazirus just to get rid of the din of mitzora, because again, he's got to shave 2 times to purify himself from being a mitzora, and he has to wait for the completion of 2 terms to do each of those shavings, because it's a situation of suffix. In a situation where a Nazir is a vadai mitzora, he's allowed to shave even while being a Nazir, but in a case where he's a suffix mitzora, he's not allowed to shave, so he has to wait 2 terms until he can purify himself from being a mitzora. That's 60 days, and then it's going to be another 2 terms that he can actually take care of the Nazirus. He can drink wine, and he can become tamei meis after 120 days. And again, the Mefarish on Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph, which we did, explains in detail the entire calculation here. Sheteglachas hanega doche teglachas hanazir, and the Mishnah explains that the shaving by tzaras, it's doche, the prohibition for a Nazir to shave, only bisman shuvada, only in a situation where he's certainly a mitzora. Avol bisman shu safek, but in a situation where there's a doubt, like in this case where he's tamei b'safek and muchlet b'safek, so eino doche, so it's not going to be doche. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samich Amud Aleph.